and Ukraine did not ask for permission from Donald Trump. They just went ahead with it to protect their sovereignty. But what they are focused on is a gay Chinese couple fulfilling their wedding dream in a more inclusive Thailand.
Donald Trump's weekend wasn't just about relaxing, as Ukraine launched one of its boldest strikes deep into Russia, taking out 30% of their bomber fleet. Trump decided to swing a golf club. Why was the former president completely absent during these critical moments?
Donald Trump is not focused on anything other than playing golf at the taxpayers' expense, that we, the people's hard-earned money, is going to.
What message does this send about leadership? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Imagine this, a daring move by Ukraine that destroys nearly a third of Russia's prized bomber fleet, and what does Donald Trump choose to focus on? His golf swing.
Air Force fleet was destroyed by Ukraine, and these planes were deep inside Russia.
That's right. While Ukraine was busy rewriting history, Trump spent his weekend golfing in Virginia, posting on Truth Social, and throwing what can only be described as a digital tantrum. Now, Trump golfing instead of addressing global events isn't exactly breaking news, but this Sunday was especially jarring. Trump didn't just avoid commenting on Ukraine's operation, a military mission so significant it's been called a nightmare scenario for Putin. No, instead, his social media posts were a mix of election grievances, calls for his supporters to fight for him, and bizarrely self-indulgent rants about his poll numbers. One post even claimed he was leading big against all Democrats. That's what was on his mind, not global security, not the dramatic escalation between Ukraine and Russia, just himself. It raises the question, is Trump so self-absorbed that he actually believes the world stops when he's on the green?
Donald Trump is now golfing in Virginia and again behaving in a very deranged fashion, making more unhinged posts.
Meanwhile, world leaders like Volodymyr Zelensky and Olaf Scholz weren't anywhere near a leisurely activity this weekend. Zelensky, as always, was overseeing Ukraine's military efforts, organizing their response to Russian aggression, and rallying international support for their cause. Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, spent his weekend condemning the Kremlin's latest moves and solidifying Germany's continued military aid to Ukraine. Other figures, even those not directly linked to this crisis, found themselves addressing the ripple effects the operation might have in Europe and on global oil markets. This kind of dedication to leadership in moments of chaos is sort of, expected. But when it comes to Trump, playing leader feels more like a hobby than a responsibility.
Realizing how weak Donald Trump is and that they have the support of Europe and the rest of the coalition of the willing.
And the stakes right now couldn't be higher. Ukraine's operation wasn't just some random military success. It was a meticulously planned and daring move that involved transporting drones deep into Russian territory, hidden in wooden crates to avoid detection. They hit key infrastructure at Russian air bases, resulting in approximately $7 billion in damages. Experts are calling it a Pearl Harbor moment for Russia.
So Ukraine took matters into their own hands and took out the planes that are used for the missile attacks.
A once dominant military power now blindsided by a smaller nation's ingenuity. This is history happening in real time, and Trump too busy working on his handicap to notice. Think about the implications here. Ukraine's success doesn't only weaken Russia's military, it also sends a bold signal to the rest of the world. It shows that a nation under siege, vastly outgunned and outnumbered, can use innovation and determination to achieve what was once thought impossible. It forces global leaders, including NATO, the EU, and yes, even Washington, to reevaluate what's possible in a war dominated by asymmetric strategies like drones. This is the kind of moment leaders pay attention to, the kind that helps shape policies, alliances, and future security strategies.
Setback for Russia, a significant part, maybe even the majority of its airworthy strategic bomber fleet destroyed.
While Ukraine demonstrates resilience, strategy, and courage on the world stage, Trump serves as a glaring reminder of what happens when a leader substitutes action for appearances. This isn't just about Trump either. It's about what kind of example he sets for American politics as a whole. If leadership is reduced reduced to photo ops and self-promotion, where does that leave the people who actually need strong, decisive action? And that's the real takeaway here. Ukraine's operation is a testament to the power of bold, calculated risks, qualities sorely lacking in Trump's approach. As he golfs, rants, and dodges accountability, the world moves on without him, highlighting more than his irrelevance. It underscores the glaring contrast between true leadership and the illusion of it. So, as Ukraine charts a new path in modern warfare, Trump stays stuck in the sand trap, literally and figuratively. Speaking of Ukraine, what exactly was behind this spider's web operation that caught Russia so completely off guard? You're gonna want to hear this. How did Ukraine pull off a strike that Russia never saw coming? And how did a team of drones hidden in wooden sheds change the entire dynamic of the war? This isn't just another military operation. It's a moment that forced Russia to look over its shoulder, literally and politically. Ukraine called it Spider's Web, and honestly, the name couldn't be more fitting. It was a meticulously planned operation designed to cripple Russia's air power right at its core.
And Ukraine did not ask for permission from Donald Trump. They just went ahead with it to protect their sovereignty.
And don't take my word for it. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called this operation absolutely brilliant. He didn't oversell it either. This wasn't just the longest range strike Ukraine has pulled off. It was a statement. The message was clear. We're not lying down. We figured out how to reach you, no matter how deep you hide your planes. Vasyl Malyuk, Ukraine's head of security services, broke it down pretty simply. The enemy has been bombing our country almost every night from these aircraft, and today they actually felt that retaliation is inevitable. That's the kind of payback nobody saw coming, but everyone knew was well deserved. But let's pause for a second and really digest the fact that this operation flipped the narrative about who's winning this war. For much of the conflict, Russia has tried to look like the big bad wolf, crushing Ukraine under its military weight. This strike, it screamed the opposite. Suddenly, Ukraine wasn't just surviving, they were dictating the pace, setting conditions, and boxing Russia into a corner. A Moscow-based analyst even noted the timing. It wasn't random. A day before Russian-Ukrainian ceasefire talks in Istanbul, Ukraine essentially walked into the meeting with a mic drop. Their confidence wasn't arrogance. It was proof they could wound their enemy in ways no one predicted. Russia, of course, tried to downplay everything.
Ukraine was making it look easy in their attack on Russia's strategic Air Force fleet.
This success wasn't just Ukraine proving a point to Russia. It was a message to the world. They didn't need permission from NATO, the EU, or anyone else to show their capabilities. And they certainly didn't wait for input from self-obsessed figures like Trump, who spent the same weekend retreating to the safety of his golf course. The contrast couldn't be sharper. One side is winning battles with ingenuity, while the other continues shouting at golf balls. But as world-changing as Ukraine's victory was, the reaction, or lack of it, within certain media circles speaks volumes. What was everyone else so focused on? Let's just say some networks had very different priorities. While Ukraine's daring spider's web strike was redefining modern warfare, what was right-wing media focused on? A big chunk of it wasn't geopolitics, strategy, or the shocking blow to Putin's military machine. Instead, they spent their time fixated on stories so trivial or performatively outraged that it makes you wonder if they even noticed a world-changing event had taken place. Spoiler, they didn't.
Again, this to me also shows what a non-factor Donald Trump even is at this point. And Ukraine's got friends who...
Take this example. One of their big headline grabbers featured a Democratic senator supposedly giving a Nazi salute. Yes, you heard that right. Ukraine was out here pulling off one of the most complex drone swarm attacks ever recorded, and some media outlets decided, you know what people really need to hear about? Whether a senator moved their arm inappropriately.
In the right-wing media over the past 24 hours, MAGA accuses Democratic Senator Cory Booker of doing the Nazi salute.
That story dominated right-wing platforms, with over 88% of its coverage coming from those sources, according to Ground News. If that ratio sounds ridiculously skewed, it's because it is. And let's be clear, it wasn't because this Nazi salute story had any actual weight or relevance to global politics. It simply checked the boxes: divisive, inflammatory, tailor-made to grab the attention of their audience. Forget the bombers going up in flames. There was apparently a more pressing war to fight, the good old-fashioned culture war. And they didn't stop there. Right-wing media also managed to work themselves into a frenzy over, wait for it, a same-sex wedding in China. Sounds tangential at best, right?
But what they are focused on is a gay Chinese couple fulfilling their wedding dream in a more inclusive Thailand.
But that didn't stop them from turning it into a morality play about the supposed downfall of society and using it to poke at diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Some outlets used the story as an opportunity to rant about LGBTQ+ rights here in the West, as though a wedding across the globe somehow tied directly into domestic political grievances. Drones taking down billion-dollar bombers? Nah. What's really important here is someone happily getting married. That's apparently the real threat to civilization. I mean, priorities, am I right? Using ground news to compare how different outlets covered Ukraine's operation paints a pretty sharp picture of what's going on. On one hand, you have outlets that treated the strike for what it was, a game changer in modern warfare and a crucial step for Ukraine as it fights for its survival. On the other, you've got platforms actively choosing to bury that story under piles of culture war ammunition. By the time Sunday rolled around, viewers tuning into these channels might not have even known Ukraine had achieved one of its biggest victories in months. And this is no accident. Experts on media bias say this type of selective coverage isn't just about grabbing clicks. It shapes how people see the world. If your news diet revolves around trivial outrage, you're naturally going to miss the bigger picture. It's not removed from reality, it's replacing it. The stakes are high. Public opinion plays a massive role in how countries like the US approach foreign policy. If voters are barely aware of what's happening in Ukraine, how can they possibly be invested in the decisions their leaders make about supporting it? But let's take a moment to laugh at just how absurd this all is. Think about what it takes to sit in a newsroom and actively choose not to talk about a $7 billion blow to one of the world's largest militaries. Imagine the editorial meeting where someone says, yeah, Ukraine just pulled off a strike that military experts are calling one of the most brilliant of the decade. But let's spend another segment dunking on a wedding in China instead. How does that meeting even run without anyone cracking up? It's almost impressive how far out of their way some of these outlets will go to avoid talking about actual meaningful news.
What are the right-wing media sources actually talking about? Because they're not giving their audience the truth.
The cherry on top is how this media blackout directly ties into Trump's whole shtick. After all, any outlet even mildly attached to boosting his image has no incentive to highlight an event that shows proactive leadership, ingenuity, or a David beating a Goliath. That's not the narrative Trump world thrives on. His brand, if we can call it that, survives on the grievance machine. Big structural feats like Ukraine's strike. That doesn't exactly get his supporters fired up, but a half-baked conspiracy about a senator gesturing weirdly? That's catnip. At the same time, this media blind spot makes Trump's absence from conversations about global crises even starker. When the media doesn't bother covering Ukraine's triumph, it also conveniently lets Trump off the hook for doing absolutely nothing that day. It's like a no comment pass, handed out for free. You have a crisis raging overseas, and the man still commanding significant influence within a major American political party is visibly missing from it. But don't worry, the same outlets giving that a pass will happily point fingers at other people for being weak on Russia. This kind of coverage, or lack thereof, not only does a disservice to public understanding, but also rewires what we expect from leaders. If we spend Sunday nights debating meaningless outrage bait, while leaders like Zelensky are literally changing world dynamics on the ground, how do we square that when it's time to hold someone accountable? There's a reason experts like Ben Mizella stress the need for transparency in news coverage. You can only make informed decisions if you know what's going on, and if your view of reality is based on which random culture war topic got the most screen time, then good luck spotting the bigger issues when they really matter. Meanwhile, world-altering events are raging on with or without certain outlets acknowledging them, and that only makes the accomplishments of nations like Ukraine feel even more bittersweet. They don't need media approval to move forward, but it says a lot about who and what we prioritize when such historic milestones barely get a mention. Speaking of accountability, why does Trump's ghost-like presence during moments like these keep getting overshadowed by shiny distractions? It's time to look at what this really means for leadership and the consequences of having none. Trump's weekend on the golf course wasn't just a poor look, it was a glaring reminder of how detached he is from global reality.
With golfers, and he was talking about how some of these other golfers are longer than him.
While Ukraine executed a high-stakes drone mission that crippled Russia's bomber fleet and inflicted $7 billion in damage, Trump's biggest flex was his Truth Social rants about polls and grievances. It's the perfect contrast, a leader focused on strategy and survival versus one focused on himself. If that doesn't make you think about the priorities we expect from leaders, it should. Maybe it's time we demand better from them, from our media, and from ourselves.